Evening, folks. I was going to go over to the airport and do this video from the airport, but got behind, never did get there. Question: how do you bounce an airplane? To answer that question, you have to understand what is happening when you land an airplane. Now, you have to understand that the weight of an airplane has to be carried by either the wings or the wheels, the landing gear. And so during landing, you're transitioning from the wings carrying the weight of the airplane to the landing gear carrying the weight of the airplane. And as you can imagine, that's probably one of the more challenging parts of learning to fly. So it's easy, if you don't fly, to think that all landing is just flying down to the ground and setting it on the ground. If you do that, that's the formula to make it bounce. Because, okay, picture this. You're coming in to land. You've seen airliners do this. They come in and they raise the nose way high, and then they just kind of hang over the runway, and then they set down on their tires. If you come in, there's two ways, two kinds of bounces. There's just the elastic bounce, and then I'm coming up with these terms, so there's probably more official terms, but there's an elastic bounce, just like bouncing a ball. And then there's an aerodynamic bounce, where you come in and the wing's not done flying, and so when you hit the nose, you come in, the nose hits, and then it bounces up. That's an elastic bounce, but because it bounces up, now it puts the wing back into a higher angle of attack, and it starts to fly again. And so you find yourself back in the air. And slower. Speaking of flying, we have a flightless bird over there attempting to fly. But now you've come in, you've touched once, you're back in the air, you're down probably below the speed you intended to ever be at in the air, and now you're coming down harder. Your main gear hits again. Your nose probably will hit again, and if it bounces again, now you're really behind the ball. Next time you come down, you may come down in control, and you may come down out of control. I've seen a crash that happened that way many years ago. The pilot came in and was tired, and his wife was throwing up on him, airsick. He was just like, I've got to get this thing on the ground. And he comes in too fast, carries too much speed down, and bounced again, higher, bounced even higher, and I lost count of how many times he bounced, but by the last bounce, he had lost directional control. He wasn't going down the runway anymore. He was off to one side, and ended up doing what we call a departure stall. He said, oh, I better put the power to it. Right about that moment, put the power to it, came way nose high, and it just went right on the road beside the runway. Everybody survived. You got to realize these kind of accidents are relatively low speed accidents, so you're not carrying the kind of energy you're carrying at cruise speed. That being said, bad things can still definitely happen as far as injuries or death. The way to recover from a bounce after the first bounce is you add some power and you settle it back into a flight regimen, and you try it again if you have runway. If you don't have runway, you add power and you go around. So going around is seen by a lot of pilots as failure. I blew that one. So there's an aversion, subliminal, no, that's not the word, subconscious aversion to doing, in this case, the right thing, which is put the power to it and go around. On top of that, if you're flying a jet, if you're flying a propeller airplane, a piston-powered propeller airplane, when you goose the power is right there unless it's turbocharged, and then there's a little bit of a lag. But in a turbine-powered aircraft, such as a turboprop, turbofan, which is pretty much what all the jets are at this point. The old turbojets, you don't see that very much except in some older military applications. Pretty much everything's been replaced by turbofan engines, what they call high bypass engines, which are much more efficient and quieter than the old turbojet engines. If you're my age or older, you may remember hanging out at the airport and just being amazed by how incredibly loud the jets were. They're just not that loud anymore. They are sometimes, but not to the level that they used to be. Point is, those engines, when you put the power to them, it takes takes several seconds for the power to build back up, the thrust to build back up and be able to fly on. So in the situation of a bounce in something like a Cessna Citation Latitude on a 4,500 foot strip, now I think it's actually now officially 5,000. That's a change that is not yet reflected in the charts, interestingly enough. But even then, if you get in a situation where you come in too fast, either too fast forward speed or too high of an angle, if you botch it, it's pretty easy to get behind the ball and start oscillating. Now remember, I said that after the second or third bounce, if you're not recovering, you're hitting pretty hard because you're going really fairly slow. I am kind of laughing at the news reporting of recent days, talking about the cause of the crash was because of equipment failure, because the landing gear failed. If you beat a landing gear on a planet enough times, the landing gear may fail. I've already posted that, you've already read it. Anyway, I'm going just on the information that is available in the news. I have no insider information, and what I know about airplanes and about the airport where that crash was. So that's how to bounce an airplane. Come in too fast, let it touch down too fast, or try to force it on the runway. Or if you just completely botch it and don't flare, don't raise that nose, well, that'll do it too. All right, I'm always happy to answer questions, especially if it's about flying. So feel free to send your thoughts, questions, etc., and I'll address them as I can. We'll do another video from the air sometime soon, I hope. Take care.